Hello friendos and bendos, it's me Z, and arch enemies are a classic trope, especially in comics. The differences between a hero and their biggest op make for incredible fights. Batman and Joker, Superman and Lex Luthor, Spider-Man and the Green Goblin. These are just some of the many iconic superhero arch-enemy duos, but there's one hero and arch-enemy duo I want to discuss in particular. This being Wonder Woman, and the fact that, right now, her arch-enemy is up for debate. Despite being a famous character, Wonder Woman has yet to be handled with enough grace or respect by DC to truly carve out a true main nemesis in the public eye, and I think that's a shame. Now, there's an argument to be made that a hero doesn't necessarily need an arch-enemy, but it's always fun to think about just who is an iconic hero's most iconic villain. And whenever you ask Wonder Woman fans this question, you always end up with one of three answers: Ares, Cheetah, or Sersi. This has been a debate for eons now, with many different factors going into who can truly be considered the arch-enemy of Diana of Themyscira, and I want to throw my hat into the ring. So, let's discuss these three characters and why they're all in consideration for the sought-after spot of Baddie Supreme, and which one I think takes home the prize. Let's start with Ares. Ares is a very interesting case because he used to be, without a doubt, Wonder Woman's arch-enemy. The Golden and Silver Ages had Ares as this looming force in the background, who was constantly stirring shit up and sending his agents into the world to thwart peace. He was Diana's ultimate ideological opponent, a firm believer in the power of death and destruction over peace and love. William Moulton Marston was very intentional with how he wrote Wonder Woman and her world. Ares as the big bad represented violence and patriarchy in general. However, nowadays all of that's changed. Ever since the Crisis on Infinite Earths reboot, Ares has yet to go back to being anything close to Wonder Woman's arch-enemy. Perez had him as Diana's first foe before she ultimately showed him the wrong nature of his ways, and he basically disappeared after that for the rest of the run. He would pop up here and there again in some other post-crisis runs, sometimes an enemy, sometimes an ally, but never a true major presence until Gail Simone. And by then, Ares had been gone as a major player for so long, it didn't feel like the return of Diana's arch-enemy, and more so just, oh neat, Ares is back I guess. The New 52 had Ares as an unlikely ally and mentor to Diana, and then Rebirth retconned all of that by having it so that Diana and Ares never even truly met. And since then, Ares has only made very sporadic appearances. Really, Ares has only stayed relevant through adaptations, being the main villain of most of Diana's different movies and cartoon appearances. But aside from that, Ares has overall taken a backseat in Wonder Woman's lore since the 80s. Next, let's talk Cheetah, who is definitely Wonder Woman's most famous foe. She's appeared in a countless number of adaptations, so the general casual public is very aware of her existence. However, when it comes to these adaptations, Cheetah is never the main threat in anything. In fact, a lot of these adaptations don't even have her fighting Diana, so let's move on to the stuff that really matters, the meat and potatoes, the source material. And the thing is that in the comics, I don't think Cheetah is able to truly be considered Diana's arch-enemy either. She didn't actually appear that much before Crisis on Infinite Earths, and while she's shown up in most runs since then, her status as an enemy is constantly changing. Barbara Ann Minerva, the current Cheetah since the 80s, is constantly bouncing between villain, anti-hero, and anti-villain. We never really know whether or not she's going to be an ally or an enemy when she shows up, which is a feeling I never have with the arch-enemies of other heroes. Sure, other heroes have teamed up with their bad guys from time to time, and every villain has gone through a "trust me I'm good now" arc, but never as much as Cheetah, who has always been presented as a more tragic figure on the edge of redemption than anything close to Diana's sworn nemesis, especially since Rebirth and her current origin. Finally, there's Sersi. Similarly to Cheetah, Sersi wasn't really a big deal before Perez's run post-Crisis, but once she did become a big deal, she came in swinging. She was the main villain of Perez's run, and since then has constantly been a massive threat. She shows up time and time again as one of Wonder Woman's most persistent and powerful foes, with an unrelenting grudge, and has been both a master planner and a team player, who just wants to fuck with Diana for the lulz. While she's definitely the best case for an arch-enemy in the comics, however, in adaptations, she's only had a few appearances, and in a good number of those, she's not even fighting Wonder Woman, so to the general casual audience, she doesn't really matter that much. All of this then leaves us with a conundrum. Ares was Wonder Woman's original arch-enemy, but has since faded into the background in the comics, his current claim to fame being that of a main villain in adaptations. Cheetah is by far Wonder Woman's most well-known enemy, and has had a plethora of appearances in comics and adaptations, but her status as a villain has never been a concrete thing, and whenever she is a villain, she's rarely ever the main villain of an arc. Finally, there's Sersi, who is definitely the most relevant Wonder Woman villain when it comes to the comics, but is mostly unknown to the general public and rarely appears in adaptations. Overall, each of these characters has their pros and cons as an arch-enemy. However, if I had to pick, I'd go with Sersi. she's undoubtedly proven herself to be Diana's archenemy in the comics since the 80s, and while yes, she doesn't have that public perception many archenemies have, it's not like that it erases all of the storylines she's been a part of. It's not like there aren't tons of lesser known heroes that casual fans aren't aware of who themselves have well-defined archenemies. Those are just my thoughts though. What do you think? Comment them down below. It's been me, Z, and I'll see you next time. Bye.